Stephen. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Steve Davies, and as Katie said, I've been running tab boards for about 12 years now. And during that time, and actually before that, one of the things that I've noticed people really struggle with most is what is generally called time management. And um, I've been doing increasing amount of work on time management and on creating a time management system, if you like. But it's my version of time management is a little different than what you might traditionally think is meant by time management, and it really all starts with the what I call the hourglass concept. And what that says is that you can't control, you can't manage time. Time's like a river that is just running on, and there's nothing you can do to control it. It's like the grains running through an hourglass. You can't stop the grains running through. But what you can do is you can change the grains that you allow to be in that hourglass. And those grains represent the activities that you commit to take on, the things that you allow in your day. And that's really where my focus is, primarily in my time management work. It's on the things that you allow in your day. And the core part of what I do in my time management consulting or my time management approach is I help people identify the things that they have in their day that don't belong there. Um, I'm going to spend just a few moments talking about that because I think it's an important kind of positioning point. And also, this is the first of two webinars. Um, this one is about controlling interruptions, or time bandits, as I call them. The next one, which is early in December, is about how you eliminate inappropriate activities from your day. Um, the object of the exercise being to make, in both of these actually, is to make room for the things that represent the greatest value activities to you. So that all sounds a bit involved. Let me give you a little bit more of a breakdown on that. So the Time Edge is my system and my website, and you can find most of the articles that relate to this on thetimeedge.com. And just give you a quick rundown of how my approach works. Um, First of all, what I get people to do is to create what I call a frustration list, which is a list of the things that you're not getting done and the things that are important to you that are continually overtaken by the tyranny of the urgent. And the object behind that is to give people really an incentive to make the changes that they need to make in their lives, because time management is essentially a behavior change, and it's something that's difficult to do on your own. And if you don't have the right motivation, then it's not something that you're going to get done. And I've seen that again and again and again, where people, they just don't get to things because they don't have enough motivation. And if you think about it, it's the same as losing weight or stopping smoking or any of those things. We don't do those things because we don't really have the motivation strongly enough. So the frustration list is designed to help people really see what they're not accomplishing, and to identify the things that they should be getting done. Um, then the next thing is to identify your top three, what I call platinum activities. And these are the three things you do that add the most value to your business. It may be sales and marketing, it may be seeing clients, um, it may be planning, it may be identifying a new market, it might be opening up referral sources. There's lots of things it could be. It could be focused on the top line. It could be focused on operations. It's anything in your business that adds value. So you might think about that for a moment here. The things you do that add the greatest value. Because what I generally find is that when I go through this with people, the amount of time that they're actually spending on their platinum activities is tiny as a percentage of their total time, usually less than 15%, and and that's a problem. And the reason why they're not spending more time on it is because they're dominated by the tyranny of the urgent. So then um, I've kind of covered that. To calculate the time you spend on the platinum activities, as I say, it's probably less than, for most people, if they're honest about what their platinum activities really are and don't define them too broadly, then um, it's less than 15%. So then the next step is to identify the value of your time when you're working on your platinum activities. So when you're doing one of these things that adds the greatest value to your business, what is the value of your time when you're working on that? Um, this is important because if you could spend more time, find more time to spend working on your platinum activities, then where we're headed with this approach is to look at how much more time, how much more value you could bring if you would spend an extra, I don't know, 1 to 5 hours a week working on your platinum activities. So so think about that, and there's a poll question. If it's not here, it's coming up. What do you think the value of your time is? And clue for business owners, I think it's probably greater than it's great. Certainly, it's at least in the $300 to $500 an hour range. If you're a business owner, then if your time's worth less than that, then you're probably not well, you're probably spending a lot of time on inappropriate activities. Uh, so, so give some thought to that and fill that in. I see we've got quite a lot of 2 to 300s coming in, um, and so to think about that, and then because then once we've got that, then what we're going to look at is the what I call the incremental time value. And what I define that as is the incremental time value is if you were able to find more time to spend on your platinum activities, then what would that be worth to you? And that's a pretty simple. Um, by the way, somebody seems to be rustling something. I don't know if we're all muted or not, but I can hear somebody rustling something. Um, Anyway, so the incremental time value is the value that you would gain if you spent more time working on your platinum activities. And the object of the exercise here is to stop working below your pay grade. So your pay grade in this analysis is the anything you do that is worth less than the value that you've placed on your time. So if you said that your time was worth $300, then anything you're doing that is worth less than $300 an hour is working below your pay grade. So if you're spending time, I don't know, uh, entering stuff into QuickBooks, doing the data entry, then you've got a $300 an hour bookkeeper. If you're spending time going to the bank, then you've got a $300 an hour messenger. And obviously, if you're in the 450 range, then you have an even more expensive bookkeeper. So once you start thinking this way, it may help you to stop working below your pay grade. Um, and then um, so, sorry, I want to go back to the last slide. Um, Oh, I can't go back to it. All right. Okay. Anyway, so to finish off that thought, um, the incremental time value. If the value, I'll just give you an example. If the value of your time was $450 an hour, then for every hour a week that you're able to spend working on additional hour that you can spend working on your platinum activities, in a whole year, that will be worth $23,500 to you. So to find out the incremental value of your time, you take the value of your time, multiply it by the number of additional hours you think you could spend on platinum activities, multiply that by 52, and that'll give you the annual additional value that you could drive if you could figure out a way to reconfigure your time so that you spent more time working on your platinum activities. So that's the overview, and don't worry if you found all that a bit intense. We're going to get a lot more down to earth and talk about the cost of interruptions and how you can at least eliminate interruptions, which is what we're going to be focusing on today. So let's spend a moment to think about the cost of interruptions. There's a lot of research on this. Um, and the, the problem is that when you come back to platinum activities, the things that add the most value to your time, to your day, when you're working at your maximum value, those things tend to be pretty important activities, and they require thought, and they're difficult, and you've got to find the right time of day to do them, um, and you're going to find it hard to get involved in them. And when all those things come together, it's sort of like a perfect storm, because you're at your most interruptible at that point, because anything looks preferable to the task that you're trying to do. So if you can answer a phone call or check your email, then that often looks attractive, because it's better than what you know you have to do. So when you're doing something important, you're already um, in a vulnerable position. And what happens when something does break your train of thought? There's a lot of research on this, and the research indicates that when something happens that breaks your train of thought when you're in an important activity, um, it's going to take you 20 minutes to get back to the same place. So you're working on your business plan, say, or on a sales proposal, and something that you're grappling with, having difficulty with, um, and you allow yourself to be interrupted, whether it's by phone, email, or by people, which are the three things I'm going to talk about. Um, and then it's going to take you 20 minutes to get back to the same place again, um, after the interruption. And so what is the cost of that interruption? Well, it's the value of your time times the times 20 minutes, essentially. So coming back to my $450 an hour, if your time is worth $450 an hour, and you have an interruption that takes you out of your flow for 20 minutes, then that interruption has cost you $150, and you can do the working on what you think the value of your time is. Um, but it's a pretty scary number when you think about it. So that interruption, answering that phone call when I could be doing something more valuable, is probably going to cost me $150 if I could take that time and work on a platinum activity that's going to drive maximum value for me. So that's the background really to the interruptions, and as I said earlier, this is really a behavior change. And if you can start to think in terms of what it's costing you to be interrupted, then it may make you a little more aggressive about eliminating interruptions. Um, so let's get to the meat of it, which is the what I call time bandits. And time bandits they're often disguised. They hold you up. They take your money, and they waste your time. So the time bandits are the in this framework are the interruptions that come in, that stop you from doing things that are more important. Um, Now, that's not to say that the things that are interruptions are going to be unimportant. It's a question of when you allow them um, to come into your day. And what this is all about is you need to be in control of your day. You can't have other people controlling your day for you. You can't have other people spending your time for you. You've got to be the one who's in control of that. Because of all the things in your life, the only thing over which you really have control is your time. You don't really have control over money or other people, or in a business sense anyway. You don't, it all comes down to time, money, and people. Well, you don't really have control over money or people, but you do have control over time. We've all been given exactly the same amount of time, and it's a question of how we use it. So if we let other people use it for us by doing things on their agenda rather than ours, then not going to be as successful as we could be. So the the first thing that I'm going to look at is the phone. I think it's been supplanted by email, but we'll deal with the phone first. So um, the original time bandit. We got better at dealing with it. Technology can help. Attitude can certainly help. So let's look at the five telephone rules. Well, the first one, and I get a lot of pushback on this, is never answer the phone unless you know who's calling. Um, I've been doing this for years. I do have a hat. Take my advice. I'm not using it. But this isn't one of the areas where that holds true, because if I don't know who's on the other end of the phone, then I don't answer it. Now the temptation is, well, it could be a client. Over the years I've heard lots of reasons why this doesn't work. From a lawyer who told me that he could have a client calling him from the steps of the courtroom, or the Department of Labor have just busted into his office or whatever. Not quite sure how often that happens as a percentage of time. And if you have an answer or an excuse like that, you probably need to hold it up to the light and examine it fairly carefully, because it may not be valid. Another one is, oh well, it could be somebody wanting to buy something from me. Um, Again, I'm not sure how often that happens, and it's just as likely to be, more likely actually, to be somebody trying to sell you something. And I've actually got there's a poll here on this one for uh, 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 some examples, I think. Oh yeah, well, first of all, do you answer the phone? This is the poll that's just popped up. So answer this honestly. Do you answer your phone when you don't know who's calling? Do you answer it when you're working on something important um, uh, that you really should be focusing on and not getting distracted? And thirdly, do you answer your phone during meetings? So let's get some thoughts on that, and uh, see those results coming in. I don't know if you can all see these. Katie, can other people see the poll results, or only me?
Yes, yes, the results are being broadcasted.
Okay, so nobody's only. Oh, a few people are starting to own up for answering the phone during meetings. We're going to come to that in a moment. Um, so let's get back to the never answer your phone unless you know who's calling. The when In the past, when I've done this, um, it's often a telemarketer. It's it may be somebody trying to sell me something. It may be somebody that I've been trying to avoid, that I really don't want to talk to. It may be a client with an important issue. Um, but if I'm working on something more important, then I have to be able to schedule or take control of my time. Um, and even if it's a client working that has an important issue, then in my world, or in my view, there are very few things that can't wait for an hour, probably. If unless the building's burning down or somebody's dying, then there's really no reason why you need to be interrupted. So um, so then there's a poll the next poll that I want you uh, to just write in anything that you'd like to share uh, about when you've answered the phone when you don't know who's calling, and what are some examples of the kind of calls that you've taken that you wish you hadn't. Um, Maybe you've bought replacement windows or double glazing, or maybe it's somebody who's trying to sell you something. Maybe it's somebody you've been trying to avoid, and you get talked into meeting them for lunch or whatever it is. So if you have an example of when you've answered the phone when you don't know who's calling, and it's been a grand waste of time, if you feel free, if you feel like sharing that, then that would be interesting. So we'll look and see what comes up there. So, as I said, that's a little controversial, and there are reasons why people, um, uh, legitimate reasons why people would say, well, I have to answer the phone, um, because that's the nature of my business. What I would say to that is, well, you've really got to hold that up to the light, um, look at it critically, think about it critically. Is that true, or is it a cop-out? Only you can answer that, but you need to ask yourself that question. The second, uh, okay, so that was the poll. What are some examples from your life, the phone calls you've answered when you didn't know who's calling? I see there's a couple of people typing. Solicitations for donations. I have to answer the phone when my assistant's busy. Um, I mean I don't know. That's another one coming in. I was told Aetna was calling our dental carrier. It ended up being a cold call from a lady named Utna, and I wasted a couple of minutes. No big deal in terms of time, but it derailed me from what I was working on. Unsolicited sales calls. Um, the I think statistically, it's most likely to be unsolicited sales calls or insurance calls. It's much more likely to be an unsolicited sales call than it is to be somebody who wants to buy something from you and spend millions of dollars with you. Although it may be, but it's statistically more likely. So thanks um, for sharing that. And basically, all of these examples that have come in have been vendors, and that really supports what I said earlier. That is most likely to be a vendor calling somebody trying to sell you something. Um, and so one of the answers, by the way, to making sure that you do know who's calling is to have a good caller ID system. Um, And if you don't have one, you should investigate that, because that's going to make a huge difference to you. If you do have a, a really robust caller ID system that will tell you who's calling. Um, there are a couple of other things that you can do that will help you with some other with the client issues too, which we'll talk about now. So you can get for people who say, well, I have to answer the phone if it's a client. Well, you can get a special VIP line with a different ringtone. My vendor has a feature called Priority Alert, which you can activate for certain phone numbers. And so what I would do here is I tell my clients that I'm giving them a priority phone line. Actually, it could be a different phone line. You could, these days with phone lines being so cheap, you could get an additional phone line and give that number to your clients and tell them that this is their VIP line and this is the number they should call, and then you can have it come into your system with a different ring. And that way, if you are working on something important and your phone rings, um, then if it rings with the VIP tone, then I guess you may decide that you need to pick that up. Um, So that's a thing to think about. And of course, the benefit there is that you're also telling your client that they're a VIP, and inviting them to either call you on a different line or always call you on um, from a particular number. Because one of the issues I have actually with not knowing who's calling is that some of my clients call me from a different number. They call me from their fax line or wherever it is, and my caller ID system doesn't pick that up, so I may miss it. Um, so actually giving them a separate number to ring is probably the best option. Um, anyway, that's a thought and something for you uh, to investigate. And somebody just wrote in that the golden rule numbers seem to be wrong. I moved some of these slides around, so don't worry if the golden rule numbers are coming up in the wrong order. because I changed the running order, but there will be five in this area. So my apologies for that. So what is now new number three is never answer the phone during meetings. Not many people said that they did. I think this is really important thing not to do. From an etiquette point of view, it's rude to the people you're meeting with. It's also rude to the person on the other end of the phone, if you think about it, because this happens to me quite a lot, actually. I phone somebody and they say, "Oh, I'm in a meeting." Usually, if I'm soliciting, actually, I guess it's code for "I wish I hadn't picked up the phone to this call," and maybe in future I'll never answer the phone if I don't know who's calling. Um, but the message it gives is that they answered the phone because they thought that it might be somebody interesting, and you're not. Um, that I believe is the message that you're sending, and not personally, that's not a message that I really want to send. Um, also, I was talking to somebody somebody came to a workshop that I did on this, and he said, "Yeah, I lost a bride that way," and everybody looked at him like, "Wow, what's that about?" And this guy owns a flower shop, and a woman came in to buy flowers for her wedding, and so he was sitting down talking to her, and the phone rang, and he said, "Oh, excuse me, I've got to take this call." And she said, "No problem." And so he took the call, and then it happened again, and he turned away to take the call, and when he turned back again, she'd gone. So she wasn't prepared to sit around while he dealt with other things when she was sitting there in front of him. So I think this is a powerful thing to think about. And also these days with smartphones, you're never away from your phone calls and also your texts and emails if you have them buzzing in your pocket. And what I do these days is I always put my phone into airplane mode when I go into a meeting. It's easy to do, and it stops it being a distraction to me. Then, batching phone calls. This is an important thing. If you're making outbound phone calls, then you shouldn't do them, obviously, in the time that you've set aside to work on more important activities. Um, I call that prime time, and one of the things that I suggest to people is that they should configure their day, or reconfigure their day actually, so that um, they set aside as much time as they can. You can start with half an hour, but if you identify what's the best time for your daily biorhythms, it might be for most people it's in the morning. If you think that 9 to 12 is your best time, then that's the time you should be setting aside to work on your most important activities. And phone calls generally are not those most important activities. I try obviously you can't do phone calls at lunchtime. Um, I try to batch my phone calls for a time of day when I'm not at my most efficient or effective, because I prefer to spend that time doing more important things, or not more important things, more things that drive more value. And then the final thing under the telephone time bandits is to time the length of your calls. It's all too easy to get caught up on a call, and especially if you've got something that you'd rather be doing. Um, that's why I think we tend to have the email pop up and look at emails coming in, or check our email while we're on the phone, or while we're doing something more important. If you're doing an important activity, then um, if you do get a phone call and you have to take it, then you need to get back to that important activity. So you need to be conscious at all times of how much time you're spending um, on a call, how much time um, you're 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 talking to the person on the other end, because it's all too easy to get caught up um, in general chit chat, which I'm not saying that's not important, but you need to be aware of how much time you're spending on it because um, your length of time is limited, and you can't afford to be losing focus on how much time you're spending on phone calls. So that's the phone piece of it. And the next one, which is really an important time suck these days, the big time bandit is email. Um, so before we get into this, if you care to share with us on the chat window, uh, what's your top tip for handling email volume? What are you doing to keep the volume of email manageable? Because I've met people who are spending hours a day working on, or basically kind of trying to keep the lid on their email, um, because some of it's important, some of it's complete rubbish, and there's a lot that sort of falls in the middle of things that you're interested in, but maybe not now. So I see first of all sorting emails in Outlook folders. Um, Turn email off for a specific period. Purchase the spam filter. Um, those are things we're going to be covering. I'll just wait for a second and see what else comes in. Although, actually, while you're typing, I'll move on to what some of my thoughts are. Um, Basically, my approach to email is that what you need to do is to control what appears in your inbox. Your inbox should be you should own it. And it sort of comes back to what I was saying before, that you should own it rather than having other people own it. That you need to be in control of what's coming into your inbox and what you're dealing with in what you allow in your inbox. Um, so with that in mind, um, we'll run through some things. The first thing, and somebody talked about this, as actually the last one that came in, that just arrived in the chat window. Um, Looks like from Bob Makowski. Hi, Bob. Um, was Is to turn off the email alert. Microsoft comes preset, or Outlook Microsoft comes preset with the email pop-up, and it's a huge distraction. That comes back to what I said earlier. If you're trying to do something difficult um, or complicated, the email always looks more attractive than what you're doing, and it makes a big difference if you turn it off. And don't just turn off the pop-up, but turn off the sound as well. Um, because if this thing's dinging away, you'll hear it ding, and you'll wonder what it is. And as I said earlier, you're most vulnerable when you're doing things that are most complicated. Um, that's when you're almost looking for a distraction, something that can legitimately take you away from what it is that you're doing. Um, so turning them off, I think, is huge. And if you do nothing else today other than this, um, you should turn the email alert off. And um, it's easy to do in Outlook, but go ahead and do that. Um, the next is email rules. Um, Put the non-urgent items directly into folders. The good example of this is things like newsletters, things that you're interested in, just not now. And it goes back to what I said earlier. The only thing that you should allow in your inbox are things that are urgent and important. The others you can put in folders and look at your leisure. Um, the only thing I would say about that is that there's a danger with this, and the danger is that you you uh, you miss things. That let's suppose you put an email rule in place that anything that comes from a particular source goes into a folder that is specific to them. And by the way, if you don't know how folders work, then if you just Google it, and it'll tell you how it works in Outlook. It's really very simple. so not folders, how rules work. Basically, you can go in, you can click on rules, and you can set a rule that says that anything that comes from tab should go into the tab folder. Anything that comes from your accountant should go into the accountant folder. Now, your accountant probably would be in your priority inbox, but you get the picture. But if you get a newsletter from somebody that you think is interesting, then you want it to go into a newsletters file. The only thing I would suggest is that you change your email hierarchy. What I have is I have a folder, a master folder called Folders with Rules, um, which is right at the top of my folder hierarchy, and I've organized that in such a way that uh, it appears obviously at the top of my hierarchy, and then it's top of mind for me, and I can see that I've got unread emails in it, and I look at that at least once a day. But the key is I look at it at the once a day when I want to look at it, not the once a day when the people send it to me. So that's really um, the key on dealing with on using um, folders. Then, in the same way that I talk about a VIP phone line, there's a VIP email address. This is really even easier to do. What you can do is you can create a VIP email address. You can send it to your clients and say, when you write to me, please use this email address. Then you can track it. You can track it separately. You can either, at the most extreme, what you can do is you can have it come into a separate folder and have that folder be your inbox, so that the only thing you see in your inbox is the email, the VIP email. I think that's a bit extreme. Or what I suggest is that there are three things you can do with in Outlook with four things actually with VIP email. First of all, you can create a rule to send VIP email to a folder. Secondly, you can play a different sound. Um, I've just advised you to turn off the sound, so that probably doesn't work. Um, but what you can do is you can have a desktop alert that comes up for VIP only. So even though you've turned off your desktop alerts, you can still have a desktop alert that comes in only for your VIP email, so that when you're working on something, you can see if a VIP has sent you a message. Uh, that's something that I think definitely has value. Um, and then you can also color categorize them so that when you do look at your inbox, they jump out at you because they're in a different color, and you never miss a VIP email because it gets caught up in all um, the, the the huge number that you're getting of emails that you're getting um, from other people. So I really like the VIP email address because, again, as I said with the phone, it has the huge benefit of being um, something that you can give to your clients and make them feel good and make them feel that you're dealing with them differently. Another thing that I talk about a lot and that somebody else wrote in was to get an effective spam filter. Um, I recently moved to Google Apps, which has a really good spam filter, and I hardly ever find things in my spam now that shouldn't be there. Before that, I used CloudMark Desktop One, which I found to be very effective. The key is these things are intelligent learning systems, and you set them up, and then in the early going, you have to check your junk folders fairly carefully. But then you can, when you set things up to indicate that something isn't junk, then it won't go into junk again. It'll be it'll it will come back into your inbox, and I think this is incredibly important because otherwise you can just drown in the volume. I get probably well over 100 spam, well, probably over 200 spam um, emails a day, but I never see them. They go straight to my spam folder, and I just do a bulk delete on them, glance at them about once a week, and do a bulk delete. Um, don't answer emails during prime time. This is kind of swept up in the other things that I talked about earlier. Um, this is all about prime time is all about setting aside a time when you want to accomplish um, your platinum activities, and you don't want to get sidetracked into dealing with um, or having to deal with emails while you're in your prime time. And again, if you feel that you have to keep on the lookout for client emails, then you can use the VIP. And you know what I there, there's a book out there called the New Work Week, or um, How to Survive on 4 Hours a Week or something. Um, and he says that he only answers his email like on Tuesdays or something. A bit extreme, but there's a lot of people I meet who say that they only deal with their email 3 times a day. Perhaps first thing in the morning, although that may be your prime time. Certainly to close out. Before the night. Um, but you need to keep the volume down. But you shouldn't be looking at them when you're trying to do something more important. And to me, prime time is something. Again, it's one of the most important things for me personally. Is I don't answer the phone if I don't know who's calling, and I really respect my own prime time, and I try to limit that to doing things that are most important and drive the most value to my business. With varying success, I have to say, but I'm conscious of it the whole time. So then the last one is the golden rules for controlling in-person time bandits. Um, and these are people interruptions. Um, So there's a poll question here for anybody who likes to type something in. So, even the airplane is going away as the last bastion of a place where you can really get away from it all, because now that you can talk on your cell phone in an airplane, it'll be um, we're losing that last place. But where do you go to get away from interruptions? Um, the best place is if you can figure out a way to do it in your office by closing your door or turning on a light that says you're not going to be interrupted or whatever it is, and we'll get into some of those in a moment. Um, but where do you go? There's Starbucks, there's libraries, there's all kinds of places. Uh, Someone said walking my dog, riding my bike and sleeping, uh, biking, running. Um, that that was more what I was thinking about more with that question, rather than exercise and that kind of thing. Was really more along the lines of when you want to do. Let's suppose you want to work on a project, and you need to get out of the office to do it. Where do you go? If you have an office, do you do it from home? If you work from home, do you go out to do it? Do you have a cave or a quiet space where you can get away from the phone and the email? Um, so, anybody got any interesting ideas that they do? So somebody here, I do monthly. I'm sorry, my screen's cutting off the left of it. Monthly, they sort of monthly breaks at a coffee shop where I brainstorm and work on higher level thinking. Part of the EOS system that we implemented company-wide. Great system, by the way. Um, uh, from the book Traction, yes, it's an excellent book, Traction, and it's got a lot of really good things in it. Okay, so we'll keep monitoring that, and I'll talk about what comes in. Um, So now some of these in-person time bandits, if you work for yourself or if you work for somebody else, these may be more difficult to control. This is aimed primarily at business owners, but it really applies to everybody, because there are a lot of in-person type of interruptions that can come in and can disrupt your flow. Um, so let's go through what some of those are. So the first is setting up a private time. This comes into what I talked about with prime time earlier. Set up a time of day when you are not to be interrupted. Um, and this is really a core part of my whole philosophy, that you've got to have a time of day for yourself where you don't answer the phone, you don't answer the email, and you don't let people interrupt you. You don't let people walk into you. And we've covered the phone and the email. The other thing is that people will come and interrupt you. When I had a company with over 200 people, and people would appear at my door when I was trying to do something else, and or they'd knock and they'd come in and they'd say, um, uh, "Can I interrupt you?" Or "Am I interrupting?" Something like that, and I say yes, or "Can I interrupt you?" I say, "You already have," and I'd make it clear that to them that when my door was closed, I wasn't to be interrupted. So it's all about setting expectations, and you have to set it up in such a way that you make it clear that you will not be interrupted during this time. Comes back to what I said earlier. The phrase I use is, unless the building's burning down or somebody's dying, I don't want to be interrupted. Anything else can wait. If they've already died, then it can wait. Bit harsh, but you get the picture. And and when people would interrupt me, I'd say, "Oh my God, is the building burning down?" And it took a little while, but they got the picture. Um, so somebody just wrote in, "Close my office door and tell my receptionist to hold the calls." Absolutely. Um, that's an essential thing to do. The number of times I'm in meetings with people, and the receptionist is still putting calls into them. And sometimes they'll say, "Oh, I'll call him back after the meeting. I'm in a meeting. I'll call him back later." Or they may say, "Hold my calls." Well, if you have a receptionist, then they can certainly hold your calls during prime time, and you can give them a list of people that you do want to talk to. Because look, I understand there are always people that you want to talk to. There are always people that are hard to get a hold of, and if they call you, then you want to take the call because you know that otherwise you'll play endless phone tag with them. I understand that. This is intended to be practical, um, but just don't let everybody do it to you. Implement a modified open door policy. The great thing about having an open door policy is that when you close your door, it really means that you don't want to be interrupted. So, with me, I set a quiet time, I close my door, and I make it clear that when my door is closed, I'm not to be interrupted. Now, you can't leave your door closed for days on end. People have to know that the door is going to open again fairly soon. One person even put a sign on their door saying prime time. Um, uh, Somebody else put a note on their door saying this door will reopen at 3 o'clock or whatever it was. Um, you may think those are a bit hokey, but if it has the impact of keeping people away from you when you're trying to do important things, then it's worthwhile. Um, a feng shui idea, don't sit where the door is in your direct line of vision. If you have an office, a lot of people have their desk where you can see the door. You're better off if it's not in your direct line of vision. What I used to find was that people would appear in my line of vision and jump up and down to try to get my attention. And it was very hard to ignore them. If you have your desk like at right angles to the door, you still know they're there, and they'll still distract you to an extent, but you can ignore them, and they will go away, or you can just wave them away. It's very different if somebody catches your eye than if you just dismiss them without actually giving them an opportunity to engage with you. Uh, if you have people working for you, when they do come and interrupt you, um, get the 30-second summary from what they want from you. Say, "Oh, I really need to talk to you," or "What do you want to talk to me about?" Give it to me in 30 seconds, and then you can decide whether you're going to deal with it then or whether you're going to tell them to come back later. Um, it puts the control with you rather than with them. Um, and then finally, I just want to talk for a moment about the monkey. This is a concept that appeared in the Harvard Business Review years ago, actually, and it's a visual about who owns the monkey. So, um, if you have, again, if you have people working for you, or vendors actually, or people you work with, partners, it can be anybody. The monkey represents a problem, and the somebody comes to you and they say, we've got a problem. We need to talk about this, and figuratively, that problem is a monkey on their back. And as soon as they say, we need to talk about this, we have a problem, then visually think of the monkey with one foot on their shoulder and one foot on yours. And then what happens next is up to you. If you say the cursed words, let me take care of it, or leave it with me, or those kind of things, then what happens is that the monkey then transfers to your back, and the person who brought you the problem is just walking away free and clear, and you've you've allocated your time to this problem rather than leaving it with them. And anything that you can do to keep these things away from you, to stop them coming from you, if you can, or if you can't do that, at least to defer them until such time as you want to deal with them. So really, to summarize this whole approach, or this whole um, um, talk on controlling time bandits. The object of the exercise is for you to take control of your day, for you to decide when you're going to deal with things, not to allow other people to decide it for you. So, so that's uh, the talk or the webinar. I've got another one coming up, and it's on December 4th, and this is on using a to-don't list to manage time. What I'm going to be talking about there is putting together. Everybody has a to-do list of some sort. What you should do is you should have a to-don't list, and the to-don't list is a place where you identify the things that you shouldn't be working on, the things that that don't belong in your day. And the key is to separate the what from the how, to separate what they are from how you're going to get rid of them. So that's what I'm going to be talking about, and I'll be showing some techniques to help people get rid of those things out of their day that don't belong there. So I hope you found this helpful. Uh, and if anybody would like the PowerPoint, if anybody, and before I send it to you, I'll correct the numbering problems. Um, if anybody has any questions, or if anybody would like to talk to me, then um, you can uh, email me. Actually, well, all the stuff is on the Time Edge, but you can also email me at sdavies at tabli. T for Tom, A for Apple, B for Boy, L for Long, I for Island, tabli.com. Okay, so thank you all, and I guess that wraps it up.
Thank you so much, Steve. That was great. So everyone knows this webinar has been recorded. The recording will be emailed to you probably within the next couple of days. You can also find other webinars on time management and a variety of other business topics by visiting us at thealternativeboard.com/events. You can also go there to register for future live webinars. Again, thank you everyone for attending, and have a wonderful day.
And thank you, Katie, for setting it up.
Absolutely, my pleasure.